It's one of those nights. The wind is howling outside. There's a chill that seems to come right through the walls. And you're buried under a pile of blankets, maybe clutching a hot water bottle for dear life. We crank the heat, grab another sweater, and make a cup of tea. We have a whole arsenal of modern comforts to fight the cold. But what if you didn't? Picture this. You're not in your cozy, centrally heated home. You're in a proper medieval fortress of towering stone. And it's the dead of winter. We're talking the 14th century, the beginning of a delightful period historians have nicknamed the Little Ice Age. This was a time of advancing glaciers. In the Alps and seriously harsh winters, and your home, this magnificent symbol of power has all the insulating properties of a giant. Drafty refrigerator. Those grand fireplaces you see in movies, sure, they're roaring, but most of that heat is shooting straight up a chimney the size of a small car. Okay, stand 10 feet away, and you might as well be outside. Okay, so how did they do it? How did lords, ladies, knights, and servants survive months of relentless, bone-aching cold in these colossal stone boxes? Well, they didn't just shiver and bear it. They were masters of adaptation, engineers of comfort in a deeply uncomfortable age. Surviving a frigid castle required a series of clever, ingenious, and sometimes downright weird life hacks that we've mostly forgotten. From weaponizing tapestries to the surprising science of animal body heat, these are the lost tricks for staying warm. Trust me, you'll never look at a cold draft the same way again. 5-number hack: weaponizing your wardrobe and your bedlets. Start from the inside out. Before you can even think about heating a room the size of a modern house, you have to heat the most important thing. You. In the medieval world, you're first. And last line of defense against the cold wasn't a wall. It was wool. The problem is that deep, internal chill you just can't shake. It's when your own body can't generate enough heat to fight the cold around you. In a stone castle, where the walls literally soak up warmth and radiate cold right back, hypothermia was a constant threat, especially at night. You'd wake up in the pitch black, and the air would feel like swallowing ice needles. So, what's the hack? A two-pronged attack. Master the art of layering and turn your bed into a fortress of warmth. First, clothing. We hear layers and think of a t-shirt, a sweater, and a jacket. That's child's play. Medieval layering was a science. The base layer, against the skin, was a linen shirt or smock. But the magic came next: wool. Lots and lots of wool. Wool was the miracle fiber of the Middle Ages. Unlike cotton, which gets cold and clammy when wet, wool can absorb up to 30% of its weight in moisture and still keep you warm. This is critical in a damp, drafty castle. Woolen garment trapped a layer of air, and your body would heat that air, creating a personal bubble of warmth. So you'd have a woolen tunic, maybe another over that woolen hose, and a heavy woolen cloak on top. And they didn't necessarily take all this off for bed. The idea of flimsy pajamas was a luxury for a much later, warmer era. Many people just shed their outer, dirtiest layers. And nearly everyone, from the lowest servant to the highest lord, wore a nightcap. It seems quaint now, but you lose a ton of body heat through your head. A simple woolen or linen cap was non-negotiable survival. Gear. But even the best personal insulation has its limits. The second part of the hack was the canopied, curtained bed. The four-poster bed wasn't just a status symbol. It was a brilliantly designed piece of survival tech. These weren't the delicate, gauzy curtains we imagine. They were made of thick, heavy wool or velvet, often lined with fur. When you climbed into bed, you'd draw those curtains shut. Think of it as a tent inside your room. Your own body heat, trapped in that small space, could raise the temperature inside by several degrees. Though the canopy on top wasn't just decorative. It stopped your precious body heat from rising away and also kept dust and spiders from falling on you. The mattress, stuffed with feathers or straw, provided one more layer of insulation from the cold stone floors. For the wealthy, the bed wasn't just furniture. It was a room within a room, a sanctuary of warmth that made survival possible. Hack for the art of sealing the stone box soakay, so you've wrapped yourself in wool and tucked into your bed tent. But the enemy is still out there, a relentless cold that creeps through every crack and pours off every stone surface. The next hack is all about preventing the cold from getting in the first place. The core problem is the castle itself. Stone is a terrible insulator. It's basically a giant heat sink. A stone wall in winter is like a permanent block of ice standing next to you. Then you have the windows. Before glass was common, windows were often just holes in the wall, maybe covered with greased parchment or shaved horn, which didn't do much to stop the wind. The most iconic solution was to fight stone with cloth. I'm talking about tapestries. We see them in museums and think of them as art, a way to show off how rich you are. And they were absolutely that. A giant, intricate tapestry was the medieval equivalent of a supercar. But they also served a brilliant second purpose: insulation. Hanging a thick, woolen tapestry a few inches from a stone wall creates a pocket of trapped air. This air acts as an insulating buffer, like in a modern double-glazed window. It dramatically slows the rate at which the cold from the stone leaches into the room. We're not talking about a small wall hanging, but colossal pieces of fabric covering an entire wall. When a lord traveled, his tapestries were often rolled up and came with him. They were considered essential furnishings. Next, you look down. At the stone floor, the solution here was to cover it with rushes and straw. Fresh rushes, often mixed with fragrant herbs, would be spread thickly across the floor. This provided another layer of insulation, separating feet from the heat-sucking stone. Of course, this created its own problems, eventually getting filthy with spilled food and other gunk. But in the dead of winter, a warm, smelly room was better than a clean, frozen one. Finally, you deal with the biggest culprits, the windows. The solution was brute force. Heavy wooden shutters were an absolute necessity. At dusk, they'd be slammed shut and barred, creating a solid barrier against the wind. It would plunge the room into darkness, but it was a necessary sacrifice. In addition to shutters, thick, heavy curtains would be drawn across the windows to catch any drafts that snuck past the wood. By combining tapestries, rushes, and shutters, you could transform a stone icebox into a defensible, livable space. Hack 3. Taming the fire god. Every image we have of a castle interior is dominated by the fireplace. It was the heart of the home, the source of light, heat, and the social center of the household. But just having a fire and using it effectively are two very different things. The fire was a demanding and inefficient god, and winter survival meant knowing how to tame it. The problem with early medieval fires was their incredible inefficiency. You often had a central hearth, literally, a stone pit in the middle of the great hall, while the smoke would just go everywhere, hopefully finding a hole in the roof. The result was a perpetually smoky, sooty room that was only warm if you were sitting dangerously close to the flames. You were constantly trading freezing for smoke inhalation. The first major hack was an architectural one, moving the fireplace to the wall and adding a chimney. This was a game changer. The chimney created a proper draft, pulling smoke out of the room. But even then, a fireplace is still wildly inefficient. Most of the heat goes right up the flue, so the real hack was fire management. This started with the right fuel. You needed dense, seasoned hardwoods like oak or beech, which burned hotter and longer than softwoods and produced fewer sparks, a critical safety feature when you've got straw on the floor. Getting this wood was a massive undertaking. A castle could burn through tons of firewood in a winter. The second part was making the fire last through the night. Letting it die out meant waking up to a room as cold as the outdoors and relighting a fire with flint and steel in the freezing dark was a miserable task. The solution was banking the fire. Before bed, the glowing embers would be covered with a thick layer of ash. The ash acts as an insulator, starving the embers of oxygen but not extinguishing them. They smoldered gently all night, producing a steady, low-level radiant heat. The room wouldn't be warm, but the banked fire would keep the worst of the deep chill at bay. Then, in the morning, a servant would scrape away the ash, add some tinder, and blow on the still glowing embers with a bellows. Within moments, the fire would roar back to life. This nightly ritual was an essential rhythm of castle life. It was the difference between waking up to a dead, cold hearth and waking up to a room with a fighting chance against the winter. Hack to the surprising cuddle-puddle weave-covered personal insulation, sealing the room and managing the fire. But medieval survival was also about pragmatic solutions that might seem strange to us. This brings us to one of the most effective sources of heat there is: other living bodies. A fireplace can warm one room. Your bed curtains can warm one bed. But what about everyone else? The servants, soldiers, and retainers didn't have private tapestry-lined chambers. Their sleeping quarters were often cavernous and cold. For them, survival meant huddling. The hack was communal warmth. We have a modern obsession with personal space, especially for sleep. In the Middle Ages, that was a luxury. For most people, sleeping was a group activity. Servants would sleep on straw pallets in a shared hall. The collective body heat of dozens of people would significantly raise the temperature of their environment, like penguins in the Antarctic. But it goes further than just sleeping near other people. Sometimes, the cuddle puddle included animals. While the lord and lady weren't bunking with the livestock, it wasn't uncommon for peasants or even soldiers to bring valuable animals inside during the harshest weather. A cow generates a tremendous amount of body heat. Having animals sleeping on a lower level could make a surprising difference to the temperature of the floor above. In the context of a castle, this might mean stables built against the walls of living quarters or 4 soldiers sleeping near the hounds in a kennel. The choice between sleeping alone in the cold or sleeping in relative warmth with a pack of smelly but very warm dogs was an easy one. This highlights a fundamental difference in the medieval mindset. They had a much higher tolerance for things we'd find unsanitary because the alternative freezing was so much worse. Warmth was a resource, just like food. Sharing your sleeping space wasn't just a social reality. It was a calculated, life-saving hack. Hack 1: the ghost in the floorboards. The Roman superheater web covered the hacks available to almost everyone. But now, we come to the number 1 hack. The ultimate, most luxurious, and most technologically astonishing method of heating a medieval castle. This was a full-blown engineering marvel, a ghost of a forgotten empire hidden right under their feet. The hypocaust. The problem for a king wasn't just survival. It was maintaining a level of comfort and power that was impossible. With a smoky fireplace, how do you host a grand feast without your guests shivering? You needed central heating. The solution was to revive a piece of lost Roman super technology. The word hypocaust means heat from below, and that's exactly what it was. The knowledge was largely lost after Rome fell, but in a few very specific places, most famously the grand castles of the Teutonic Knights, like Malbork in Poland, this incredible system was reborn. It's crucial to note, this was incredibly rare. The absolute peak of luxury heating technology. Here's how it worked. Deep in the castle's foundations, an immense fire would be built inside a furnace. But instead of going up a chimney, the superheated air and smoke were channeled into a space directly beneath the floor of the room above, which was held up by an array of stout pillars. This turned the entire stone or tile floor into one gigantic, room-sized radiator. The heat would rise gently and evenly, warming the entire space with no smoke and no drafts. Walking into a hypocaust-heated room must have felt like pure magic. The Teutonic engineers even perfected a version called a heat storage hypocaust. The furnace would heat a massive pile of granite stones for hours until they were glowing hot. Then the fire was put out, the smoke flew sealed, and vents were opened that connected the hot stone chamber to the room above. The heat stored in the granite would then radiate out for hours or even days. It was a massive thermal battery. Of course, This was the ultimate power move. Building a hypocaust was incredibly expensive and required brilliant engineering. Was only ever used to heat the most important rooms in a castle, the Grand Master's chambers, the main hall, or the chapel. For everyone else, it was back to fireplaces and tapestries. But for those privileged few, the hypocaust was a statement that you had conquered winter itself. Show a side of medieval life we rarely see, not just battles and banquets, but the quiet daily struggle for warmth. It was a battle fought with wool, wood, stone, and incredible ingenuity. If you enjoyed uncovering these forgotten secrets of the past, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. We have a lot more history to explore together. And let us know in the comments which of these hacks you found most surprising. Would you rather have a smoky fireplace or a bed full of dogs? Conclusions: so, the next time you feel a winter chill and reach for the thermostat, think about the frozen castle. Think about the silent war being waged against the cold in every corner of that stone giant dot. It was a war fought with layered wool, turning a person into a walking furnace. It was fought with beautiful tapestries that were also secret weapons of insulation, and with simple wooden shutters that held the night at bay. It was fought in the careful ritual of banking a fire, preserving its embers like a sacred duty. It was fought with the primal, shared warmth of bodies huddled together, a reminder that community was a survival tool. And for the very few, it was fought with the ghost of an ancient empire, a hidden engine of fire that turned freezing floors into sources of magical heat. The people of the Middle Ages weren't just primitive figures shivering in the dark. They were resilient, resourceful, and brilliant engineers of their own comfort. They understood thermodynamics in a hands-on way that we, in our centrally heated world, have had the luxury to forget. They knew that surviving in a frozen castle wasn't about one grand solution, but about 100 small, clever victories won every single day. Thanks for watching.